Hello and welcome, everyone. Good to see all the faces streaming in. I know Zoom generally turns the camera off when you enter the room, so thank you for those who have turned it on, and just good to see everyone in the different locations. My name is Rachel Evans, and I work with the Capital Institute team, and I'm based in South Africa. I did spot another South African in the chat, one, I don't know if they're more, but that made me very excited. Someone in Cape Town. Perhaps they recognize the music too. We had a South African artist today as our intro song. But yeah, just great to be with everyone today. And thank you for joining us for our preview to the Introduction to Regenerative Economics course. This course will be starting next week, Wednesday. We'll be kicking off, and it's an 8-week course that's held on Zoom, so virtual course. All right, so we'll dive in a little bit. So the session today, we're going to spend some time, I'm going to give a little bit of an intros, and then we're going to have a presentation that we're going to present, and then we'll jump into some of really the tactical stuff of timing of the course, syllabus, and try answer some chats that some questions we've already received on email, and trying to just think through what would support you most in making this decision if you want to join us next week. We'll leave some time at the end as well for Q&A. And we're hoping to keep this all within an hour, but we don't have a hard stop at the top of the hour. So we're also happy to stay on if there's some additional questions as well. So with that, I'll jump straight in. So a little bit of context on the Capital Institute. The Capital Institute is committed to transforming our economic and financial systems through online educational programs, as well as other offerings. John Fullerton, if you haven't heard of him, he will be our lead teacher throughout the 8-week program. This means he'll be presenting all our lectures, as well as attending all the other live sessions that we have throughout the course. So a little bit about John. John Fullerton is an unconventional economist, impact investor, member of Club of Rome, and featured in the award-winning documentary Going Circular. Some have said a philosopher as well. He is the architect of regenerative economics, first conceived in his 2015 booklet, Regenerative Capitalism, How Universal Patterns and Principles Will Shape the New Economy. After a successful 20-year career on Wall Street, where he was a managing director of what he calls the old JP Morgan, John listened to a persistent inner voice and walked away in 2001 with no plan but many questions. The questions crystallized into his life's work with the creation of Capital Institute in 2010. John's work is now featured in the 8-week online course, Introduction to Regenerative Economics, New Ways of Seeing, Thinking, Being, and Managing for the 21st Century, which has been experienced by over 1,000 people from 53 different countries. And with that, I'm going to welcome John up here as well. And he's got a little bit of a presentation for you. And yeah, John, hello. I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Rachel. I always am embarrassed when people talk about my bio in front of me. So, but anyway, great to be with everyone. I really love doing this course, and I'm always anxious before the next cohort starts if anyone will show up the next time. And sure enough, people keep showing up, so we'll keep doing it. It's really a privilege for me to be able to share what's really been a now over 20-year search that I've been on since experiencing 9/11 up close and personal. That's really, I would say, what triggered this. That happened after I left Morgan, but it really shocked me into a question about, in a sense, what the hell is going on in the world. And of course, that question has only become more serious and obvious as the world continues to get a bit crazy. So I've been, for whatever reason, just obsessed with this question about our economy really ever since 9/11. The epiphany I had, I guess, along the way was that exponential growth on a finite planet violates the laws of physics, and it's the economy that drives so much of the ecological destruction and social dysfunction, and it's finance that drives the economy. So it's people like me who sort of think they're pretty smart who are actually at the heart of the problem. And that was a real awakening for me, and has given me the motivation to wrestle with that question really ever since. I think the exciting thing about this, and the search continues to go on, and insights continue to reveal themselves that seem to reinforce the path that we're on toward this idea of a living systems-based economy. And in 2022, the Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded for this concept of quantum entanglement, which apparently, I can't explain it, but it literally means that everything is connected to everything, not just on this planet, but across the entire universe. And that's actually a very hopeful and empowering idea, because what it means is that all the little things we all do, including this little course, affects the outcome, because everything's connected to everything. And I think it gives us a sense of agency that it sometimes is easy to lose in the face of these really overwhelming challenges. So what I thought I'd do today is simply give you a taste from the course, maybe 10, 15 minutes of concepts, just to give you a flavor of what we're gonna be going over over the course of the 8 weeks. And so bear with me here. Can't do anything without a slide deck anymore, right? Okay. Is that working, Rach?
Yep.
Great. Okay. So this is really a revolution in the way we see what everyone else is already seeing. And it's a revolution in the way we think about the management of our, the word economics literally means, the Greek root of it means management of the household. And so think of household as the bigger household of our global economic system. And what I believe we need to do is see the so-called problems in a fresh way. And as I mentioned earlier, we now refer to this cascading series of crises, social, geopolitical, economic, health, and obviously ecological, as the polycrisis. Some refer to it as a meta-crisis. And of course now, since the last cohort, each cohort, it seems like there's yet another crisis for us to have to wrestle with. Last time it was the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and now, of course, we have the catastrophe unfolding in the Middle East, and we also have the frightening and potentially exciting rapid rollout of artificial intelligence. So, literally each year, the complexity increases, and interestingly, the word apocalypse actually means to uncover or to reveal. And so in a sense, I believe we are going through an apocalypse in the literal sense, because we are uncovering and revealing some fatal flaws in the way we see and think about the world. And Kenneth Boulding was one of my kind of early inspirations, and he has this beautiful quip that anyone who thinks that exponential growth can go on forever in a finite world is either a madman or an economist. And he said that as an economist who had studied system science. And we'll review in the course, if you're not familiar with it, probably the now iconic way to think about the expansion of the economy breaching the biophysical barriers or limits, the biophysical limits of planet Earth, is the work done by the Stockholm Resilience Center, this concept of planetary boundaries. And again, since I've been deeply thinking about this, the situation only gets worse and worse. And so the point of this is to remind ourselves that we're not just dealing ecologically with climate change. Climate is one of 9 boundaries that are that we're in danger of breaching. In fact, we have breached 6 of them. And of course, there's lots of forgiveness in the system, but we can't be breaching these boundaries and accelerating through them and not pay the consequences. We're gonna discover in the course that the error in neoclassical economics can actually be traced all the way back to the beginning of the scientific revolution. And there's an interesting story about that helps explain why our ecological framework, our economics frameworks and the core fundamental neoclassical economics foundation is, in my opinion, fatally flawed. And it turns out we all happen to live at the moment when that flaw has become our moment of reckoning. And in case you need any evidence about the fatal flaw of neoclassical economics, you only need to look to the 2018 Nobel Prize in Economics, and I put that word in quotes because it's not a true Nobel Prize, and we'll share that story in the course. But the 2018 prize in honor of Alfred Nobel in economics was awarded to William Nordhaus, who I'm sure is a very smart man. But it was awarded for his model that worked out that the optimal global warming we should shoot for is 3.5 degrees Celsius, when in 2015 the Paris climate talks and the scientific consensus among climate scientists was that 1.5 degrees ought to be the absolute limit. And how that's possible is an interesting story. It's perplexing, but it tells anyone with common sense that economics is, as a discipline, has some serious issues to wrestle with. Now, finally, the absurdity of neoclassical economics was revealed largely by the work of Herman Daly and the entire ecological economics field. There are many brilliant scholars who have been developing this concept of ecological economics, and that is that the economy is in fact a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment or of nature or of the biosphere, and not the reverse. It's my view that ecological economics, to quote one of my teachers, Peter Brown, who actually hired Herman Daly at University of Maryland, ecological economics is, in a sense, unfinished business. And I believe that my work is building on the shoulders of Herman and others, but trying to continue and expand to find a solution that doesn't demand, in a sense, a collapse of the economic system as we know it. We're going to talk about the difference between reductionism as a scientific method and a holistic way of seeing the world. And so this is really the third key point here, is that holism is a new way to see the world as it really is, but it's actually remembering what we've always known, because holistic thinking is very much the indigenous way of seeing the world. So we're having to understand the great advances of the scientific method and the reductionist method, but also not lose track of a bigger holistic way of seeing the world, more of a right brain way of seeing the world than the left brain that now dominates our thinking. And what that all suggests is that we're going through, I believe, not just an era of massive change, but an actual change in era that is comparable to the shift from the medieval era to the modern era. And of course, that's going to feel very discomforting. But this is a big epical shift in the history of humanity. And I believe it is anchored in this idea of the shift in paradigms from the reductionist method that the scientific revolution introduced to us. It's not to suggest that that was all bad. Obviously, great progress has resulted from that, so we need to hold on to that. And yet we need to zoom out and see that the sum of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and it's the relationships between the parts that actually is the more profound reality of how the world works. And we're going to talk a lot about that. So we're in a shift of era. That's a lot to wrestle with. We take a deep breath, and we're gonna work through that. It's actually very exciting and very optimistic. So real quickly, just to give you again a snapshot, a definition of regenerative economics is the application of nature's laws and patterns of systemic health, self-organization, self-renewal, and regenerative vitality to the design of socioeconomic systems. That's a definition that we developed with my colleagues at Kaplan Institute, in particular my science advisor, Sally Gorner, over 10 years ago. And it seems to be holding up pretty well, but it's not the ultimate definition of regenerative economics. It's important to say what regenerative economics is not. It's not simply a new name for sustainability. It's not a political philosophy of the left or right. In fact, I hope that someday the politicians will be arguing with each other about how to create a regenerative economy. And there will be a conservative and liberal perspectives on that will both be valuable. And it's not just an environmental or an agricultural idea alone. It applies to the management, the seeing, the decision-making, and the management of anything that is complex. And things that are complex are things that essentially things that are that involve human beings, organizations that have human beings in them. Nature is complex, and of course, managing our place in the natural world is a complex challenge. So the idea of regenerative economics is essentially built on three premises. The first, and this one is worthy of discussion. We won't have time for that today, but the premise is that the human economy is a complex living system itself. It's made up of human beings and their tools and technologies. It's embedded in the biosphere, which we now understand is a living system. And in accordance with the idea of fractal patterns, holism, if the economy is made up of humans and embedded in a human system, it too must be a living system, although obviously a very stressed one. The second premise is that there are patterns and principles that describe how all living systems that have sustained themselves, otherwise they'd be dead systems, how all living systems actually work in the real world. And that's science. That's no longer debatable. The challenge is how to describe them using linear language, but it is accepted science that there are patterns and principles that describe how living systems work. And the third premise then is that if our human economy is to be sustainable and thrive over the long run, it too will need to have a system design that aligns with these same patterns and principles. And the importance of first principles is that we're lost. We are literally running the world economy on a theory that is grounded in neoclassical economics, which is grounded in Newtonian physics, which is built on some assumptions that are patently false. And so when one is lost, one needs to get back to first principles. So these principles, I don't mean to use the word as sort of, these aren't choices. These are descriptive qualities, not John's opinions or ethical foundations. These are design principles that describe how reality really is. And we'll go through them. I've presented the 8 principles of regenerative vitality in my papers and in my talks. These are not meant to represent truth. These are meant to represent one person's best attempt to reduce, using the reductionist method again, something that is complex into as few few principles as possible without losing the essence of the living systems process itself. We're going to dive into each of these in depth, and it's important to recognize that they all work together. They're not individual pieces. but in order to understand them, we will dive down and describe each of them individually, but they're also not as comprehensive as I'd like them to be. But the key is that if we align our economy with these 8 principles, just as a rough place to start, we will unlock potential just as any healthy living system manifests potential. And I believe that potential is the source of our future prosperity, since the growth gig is up, if you will. And if there is no source of future prosperity other than economic growth, I think we're in a very bad place, because we are way over our skis. We are well beyond the boundaries of the scale of the human economy relative to the biosphere. So we need to shrink a lot of things, but we also need to find a new source of prosperity if we're to have a hopeful path forward. And I think we have one. And I was shocked to learn, after I had done a lot of this, Bucky Fuller, in his last short book, it was really his final message to humanity. It's a little book called Grunch. He wrote, and actually it was a critique of capitalism, interestingly enough. And he wrote that nature is a totally efficient, I can't even, there's something in the way here. Nature is a totally efficient, self-regenerating system. If we discover the laws, I would say patterns and principles, that govern the system and live synergistically within them, in other words, if we align with these patterns and principles, sustainability will follow. In other words, sustainability is the outcome of aligning with the process of regeneration, and humankind will be a success. And what was clear, if you read the book, is that he also meant that if we don't align our human economy with the patterns and principles of how life works, humankind is in trouble. So back to you, Rachel. And I should say just one quick thing about Rachel. She's been a invaluable partner with me through this journey of this course. We're now entering cohort 5. And she will become all of your best friend during the time of the course. She's just been fantastic, and it's fun to work with you, Rach. So back to you.
Thanks, John. I'm going to leave you.
I kept to my time frame, right?
Well done. You'll learn if you join our course that John loves sharing in our lectures, and he really takes the time and space as well to hear from everyone. So he loves the community engagement part, and is always for a little bit of overtime so that he can continue to connect with the community. All right, so I'm going to dive right into some of the practical elements of the course. As John mentioned, I'm here as a support as you're figuring out if you want to join the course. You'll find me on the Capital Institute email address. I'll pop that in the chat just now. So if any of your questions don't get answered today, or if you have questions that pop up later, please just get in touch with me. Okay, so let me grab my notes over here. So a little bit of the course overview. As mentioned before, I know we've got a lot of new people joining in already as well, so some of it will be a little bit of a repeat. But it started in 2021, and since then we've had 4 cohorts. This will be the 5th one, and we've had over 1,000 participants in total from 53 different countries. That's a question we often get, where are people located a lot of the time, and we really have had a big pull from all around the world. So this is an 8-week course. We have 8 modules, and we have live sessions every Monday and Wednesday. Those ones are part of the main content. So Mondays are live lectures. They are 2 hours long and start at 11 a.m. Eastern. And then Wednesdays we'll have either a discovery dialogue or practice lab. The discovery dialogues are 90 minutes and the practice labs are also 2 hours. So in the discovery dialogues, we invite a guest. So we'll have a live guest speaker. And as with the name, John and the guest will go into dialogue around specific topics. So it's very much not an interview style. It's a lot more relaxed and casual. They'll collectively decide on the topics that are relevant to be talking about within the current time and to the course. So we'll have a dialogue with them, and then there's time to engage in questions with the guest speakers as well. And on alternative Wednesdays, we'll have practice labs. And these are really designed to start taking what you're learning from lectures and the content and applying it within a group context. So we'll give you scenarios to work through in the practice labs in small groups, and that's very much workshop style and hands-on, most of the time spent in breakout groups in smaller sort of numbers, working through questions and scenarios together. Then we have, all right, so that's, yeah, everything starts at 11, most of them start at 11 a.m. Wednesdays, after that, we have bonus options. So Thursdays, most Thursdays will have a bonus event for you that's live as well. So we'll have Nora Bateson joining to do a warm data lab. People Need People. Sandy Wiggins will join us to go through some meditation and breath work. And we're working on another workshop where Jessica Groupman will be leading us through some regenerative tech. So those are really bonuses, and those are on Thursdays. Times differ as well from 1 hour to 2 hours. All our Monday and Wednesday sessions are recorded, or all the sessions are recorded, except for some of the bonus ones. So all your live lectures, discovery dialogues, practice labs are all available on the course platform. So you will have access to them if you can't join live. All right, some additional content. We have lots of discovery dialogues of John in discussion with different thought leaders. And we've curated that into modules. So as the modules go live each week, you'll have additional recordings that you can listen to through Discovery Dialogue, as well as a reading list. But these resources are really there for you to be able to work through at your own pace. You don't have to keep up with the 8-week schedule. All the recordings and content will be available to you long after the course. You have unlimited access to all of that, including all the live sessions that are recorded. And then we've got a lot of questions about different time zones. We've had a huge amount of interest from Australia, which has been really great, asking how does this work? And I know live sessions are a crazy hour for Australia and for Asia. So to compensate for that, obviously all our recordings will be available and you can follow through that. And we're going to be creating small study groups as well. So this will be very much geographically selected, and we'll be having small groups where you will then be put with people within your area. And then if you have extra capacity, you can go through the content, find meetup times to then workshop that together. So if you are from a time zone that really doesn't work with our live sessions, please reach out to me and we can create together a journey that works for you as well within these small study groups. Tools that we'll be using, Zoom is definitely our best friend through this. So everything will be presented on Zoom for live sessions. And then our course platform, we'll be using a platform called Mighty Networks. And there is where we'll put all the content, the recordings. You'll also have access to everybody who's joined up in the course. So you'll be able to connect with participants, and also the whole Capital Institute team will be there too. So you can reach out directly. So a little bit of a summary: Mondays are live lectures, Wednesdays are discovery dialogue, or practice lab, and then their bonus sessions on a Thursday. And I see there are things coming through in the chat. John, are you picking up anything there you want to bring forward?
I just responded to one question, which I think is worth maybe sharing. Probably a lot of people missed it, but the question was, how are we measuring impact? And that there's a lot of frameworks out there, and in a sense, how do we know this is working? And it gets to the heart of the matter, which is that actually, let me use this as a quick digression. I'm currently reading Ian McGilchrist's book, The Master and His Emissary. And it's about how our left brain, right brain work together. And I can't do justice to it. It's a big, thick book. But we are so trained to think analytically in a reductionist way that we're always searching for, so how will we measure the impact of this, that, or the other change? And it's really my belief that the most important thing that we will be sharing is how trapped we are in our reductionist way of thinking, and what a massive opportunity is for us to reignite our more holistic, more intuitive, more imaginative, more inspirational, more feminine way of thinking and seeing, which is, to generalize unfairly, sourced in the right brain. And it becomes almost a, if you want to unlock the potential of how living systems work, you focus more on creating the conditions for health rather than measuring the outcomes, because you get surprised by the outcomes. So, the things I'm surprised about and excited about in terms of the outcomes of the course is that there's over 150 people that keep coming back and taking it a second and a third time. I see many faces who've been through this course at least 4 times. And they are building collaborations with other people in this course community. And what they will do together, I'll never know, and I will never be able to measure. But I just know, I sense that that emergent potential is happening, and that sounds a little bit wooey gooey and soft, but that's how I discovered this idea in the first place. Was not because I set out to rethink economics. It was through a series of kind of epiphanies from very different fields. So it's a shift in paradigm. It's a shift in the way we see the world and our role in the world, as one of the course participants said.
Thanks, John. I'm going to jump into some questions I'm seeing pop up in the chat. So one is, what's time commitment? We would say if you want to engage live and in the sessions, or even listen to recordings, we'd say a minimum of 4 hours a week would be including the live sessions. We've kept it very light on homework or work outside of the live sessions or the recordings of the live sessions. So it can be very as low as 4 hours a week, but you can continue to engage with different content and materials and obviously add hours to that as well. So for that question, how many hours? Minimum would be 4 to 5 hours. Then someone said that they aren't able to make the upcoming cohort. When's our next one? We will have another one in 2024. I can't tell you dates at this point offhand, but we will have one later in the year. And then John, I wonder if you don't mind talking to the finance course. There was a question on what's the difference between the economics course and the finance course.
Sorry, I can't keep up with the chat. And before I get to that, I just wanted to respond. There was one question about the practice labs to talk about what they are, and I'm glad to give the opportunity to that. So the biggest challenge of doing a course like this over Zoom and in 8 weeks is that, think of this as we're igniting a new muscle that we've all let atrophy. And it may get ignited and then we go back to our old habits. And so the only way to really learn this is to bring it into your own context, into your family, into your personal life as a human being, you're a living system, into your family, into your community, into your organization, and work with it, practice it. And Regenesis, which are one of the pioneers in this field, they don't do an 8-week course, to my knowledge. They want you to work intensively over a much longer period of time in your own context, and that would be the ideal way to do it. What we try to do with the practice labs is to work with these living systems principles on 3 different scales. The first scale is the I, and Sandy Wiggins brings this framework of the I, the we, and the it into the course structure. So there'll be 3 practice labs, and in the first one, we try to think through and work with the 8 principles in the context of our own lives. That's usually the easiest, and so we build on that foundation. The second practice lab is to bring them into the context of either our community life or our working life, the organizations that we work in. And that gets trickier, but the idea is that an organization is a living system. So creating the conditions for health in an organization, no matter what it does. This isn't about, greening supply chains, or this industry is good and this industry is bad. You could have an oil and gas company that had a culture that was regenerative, even though its products and services are degenerative. And you can have a technology company like Facebook or Meta, whose products and services are potentially enormously regenerative, but they have a massively degenerative extractive business model. And yet each of these have a culture that could be regenerative or degenerative. So we'll think about how to apply living systems principles into the culture of an organization. And then finally, in the third practice lab, we try to expand that to the concept, the it being the economy itself. And we have I think a fun kind of a scenario that we give you all to wrestle with. In fact, both the second and the third one, we have scenarios that are fictitious, but based on reality. And we go to work and try to wrestle with what we would do in this with this set of circumstances. And it's our best effort in a group of people who all have very different contexts to work on a shared context as a group to try to put these muscles into practice. And then we have lots of ideas on what to do post-course to continue that practice, because this isn't like math where you learn how to do algebra and then you know how to do algebra. This is a muscle we need to work with really for the rest of our lives. And believe me, it's easy to fall back into the mindsets that we currently have because we've developed them over 400 years. Now, the question about finance, there's a whole, we do 1 week on finance, and then there's going to be a finance course. I think it starts in May, which, think of that as a double click on the finance week. It would be much better to do the economics course first and then the finance course. So if you're thinking about doing the finance course, I strongly encourage you to do this course. If you can't do that, we do have sort of a quick and dirty, executive summary of the living systems principles that we will give you prior to the finance course. But it's really much better to process this fully and then try to apply it to our financial system, which, believe me, is another massive challenge in and of itself. So I hope that's helpful. There is on the website, and there's really 2 books. There's a Regenerative Capitalism. It's actually going to be published as a proper book. I don't know why I didn't do it until now. Soon, I'm actually working on that now. And then there's another one called Finance for a Regenerative World, which is in 4 parts on the website, if you're interested. And those 2 together represent the combined body of work that I've developed so far.
Great. Thanks, John. All right, we've got about 20 minutes left, and we would love to bring some voices into the room. So I know there are more questions in the chat. We haven't gotten to all of them, but we encourage people to just put your hand up. So if you know the little reaction emoji at the bottom of the screen, raise hands, and then we would love to bring your voice into the room with questions that you have. All right. Jimo, let me know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Hey there, Jimo. Yeah.
Jimo.
Let me lower my hand. I totally hear South African, by the way, so I'm curious about your story. I'm from Mozambique. But my question is around if we're working on independent work. In my case, I'm working on amongst many things, I'm writing a white paper around natural capital and specifically trees. So I was curious if this is a good opportunity to apply the learnings towards independent work, or if instead the course is very much structured. And if not this course, is the finance one perhaps a better fit for that opportunity? Thank you.
I guess I'm not quite sure I understand what you're asking. I mean,
Yeah. I guess I'm curious if this course brings about opportunities to for participants to focus on a thesis or a theory of change
Oh, I
that
see.
is, I guess, independent of the course
Yeah.
syllabus.
I would say yes and no. Honestly, I would say we do two offerings that are meant to be kind of post-course. One is a design lab and one is a fellowship. And those are meant to be, in a sense, more personalized, independent study type programs. In the year-long fellowship, this course and the finance course are offered as part of that year-long experience. But if you're seeking, in a sense, some individualized, feedback and contribution to your thesis, with 200 people in this course, typically 250 sometimes, it's almost impossible for me to be able to say I can do that. But I would be confident in saying that this will be a useful foundational and stretching exercise that will impact your own work for sure.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks for your question. Anyone else would like to raise their hand and bring a question into the room?
I'm really sorry. I can't figure out how to put my hand up, but I don't know whether I can just jump in.
There we go. Absolutely. Hi, Liv.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. I don't know whether I articulated what I meant when I put the question on the chat, but I don't know whether you could just explain a little bit about the career options that you think this course opens doors to, because I've seen that you kind of summarize what types of people the course is intended and designed for. And I appreciate that it's kind of got a theoretical element to it, but in terms of, kind of looking at career progression and routes into entering a space, then we could just kind of explore that a little bit. And then the second thing was about whether the finance course is almost a bit like a regenerative economics like incubator, and whether it focuses on real life examples that businesses and startups deploying regenerative economic principles, but like disrupting the finance sector, because I guess that's kind of where my interests lie.
Mm-hmm. So on the first question, I would say we're still in the pioneering stage, and I can't promise that when you get your badge that says you completed Capital Institute's Regenerative Economics course, the job offers come pouring in, or that there's an obvious career path. I think the exciting thing is that the insights that I hope to share with everyone, I actually believe apply to everything. Whether you're going to go into education, agriculture, technology, finance, manufacturing, it's a new way to see what we're already seeing, and I believe that it is an approach that if we don't collectively learn to do, we are heading for very, very dark times. Now, my belief, and I say this with hope, but also trepidation, is that as the world wakes up to the reality that we're facing, companies, governments, policymakers, financial organizations, regulators, et cetera, will realize that we need these skills, and the Capital Institute's courses will be sought after, or people who have had that experience will be sought after, just like today Harvard MBAs are sought after. But that's an arrogant thing to say, and obviously I can't, commit that. But that's my vision for this work, is that the world will wake up. I was at a meeting. I went to the 2015 Paris COP, the first and last COP I've ever been to. And we were sitting around a table and there was like 30 of us, a bunch of interesting people. And we all had like 3 minutes to talk about what we were working on and what we were passionate about. And I started explaining regenerative economics to this group in 2015. And I realized they had no idea what I was talking about. And so I stopped and I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm working on what people are going to become interested in when they realize what they're working on isn't working. And I think that's going to happen. I feel it's already happening. Someday, I hope we'll have a whole capability to do matchmaking between organizations that are looking to hire to fill roles, and people from the course community that are looking for new career opportunities. That's beginning to happen, but in a very one-off way. So I hope that answers that part of the question. On the finance, there's always a tension between in a short period of time, 8 weeks, leaping to the practical applications. Naturally, everyone wants to see what this looks like in the real world. And we do some of that both in this course and in the finance course. But I would say both of them are, if I had a bias, it's that I think we all rush too quickly into the make it practical, and we don't wrestle enough with the conceptual. And this conceptual wasn't invented in like some, on a chalkboard in a math class. The conceptual that I'm sharing is the product of 20 years of practical experience on Wall Street, and then another 20 years of learning through practical experience. My investment experience studying, we studied 50 projects that are documented in our field guide to a regenerative economy. And I've read a ton of books and whatnot. So it's a combination of practical and experiential learning. And I want for 8 weeks for us to focus more on the conceptual, even though we could show 100 case studies of stuff and talk about whether they're regenerative or not. I don't think that's as valuable to you all as to really spend the time on the more conceptual. But we do both. I just have a bias toward not leaping to the very concrete examples, because if we talk about concrete examples, then those become your idea of what a regenerative economy is or what regenerative finance might look like, as opposed to the thousands, the millions of things that we would never talk about that are there for us all to discover once we have this new muscle developed, which is seeing things more holistically.
Thanks, John. I'll just build on that as well, Liv. Just with the job opportunity, I think this course really connects you to a great network. Our cohorts in the past have had 300 participants per cohort, which allows a lot of connection. So you have access to 1,000 people through the network. And then the finance course, I know you mentioned, is it like an incubator as well? The structure is very similar to this one. So it's also live lectures on a Monday, and then guest speakers in the week. So my understanding of an incubator is more one-on-one or hands-on. So let me know if that answers your questions.
Yeah, no, they're both really helpful responses and very convincing in terms of not like jumping into the practical and like really grappling with the conceptual first. So thank you for that answering them.
Great.
Sure.
All right, we're gonna have Tom, and then I see Carmen's there.
Just on
Carmen's,
that last point, one of the things I
Yeah.
say in the course is that I'm going to force us to become comfortable in our discomfort, and hold the. Someone had the analogy. It's like, you listen to a new song, and after the first 30 seconds, you love it. And what I'm going to ask you to do is listen to the whole song before you share it, and try to share it with your friends. Let it absorb first. And I think that's creating more value for you than leaping to the practical too quickly.
All right, so I'm going to invite Tom up, and then we'll hear from Carmen, who's one of our alumni. Hi, Tom.
Rachel and John, thanks very much. I wanted to pose a question really around communication, and I'm going to link it to my observation that, having worked in this space for a number of years, the challenge of messaging and coordinating messaging seems to be really difficult. And linked to my question about how this course may or may not assist, enable in messaging and communicating to fulcrum points, PowerPoints in our current system. How does this community of the Capital Institute integrate, if at all, with other communities? Is there a network movement kind of feel to Capital Institute? And John, as you envisage it, today and where it might go in the next 5 years, what are your feelings about the network effect?
Well, that's a lot. That's a great question. So where do I start? I think this community is what Regenerative calls island of coherence, right? There's a building network community of people that are aligned around this idea of living systems approach to economy, to organizations, and they've got this shared experience of going through this course together. And what the theory of change is that there is, hundreds, if not thousands, of islands of coherence emerging around the world that are related but different. But they're all responding to the pressure, and that one day, by connecting these islands of coherence, suddenly you've got, a global mycelium of coherence with hubs everywhere, a network. And how that happens and how we do that is not my personal expertise. We do have. We spent a huge amount of time talking about it and how to do it. I would say that's a huge opportunity, for anyone who is a network expert to help us figure out how to do that. But philosophically, we are absolutely trying to build an island of coherence that is interconnected to other aligned, or at least philosophically consistent, islands of coherence, as opposed to building a church where, you have to believe in this, that, and the other thing to be a member of the church. I don't think any of us understand where this is going. And I've been surprised in my learning. Most of my learning has happened in contexts that no one would have ever expected would have developed the learning. And so being open and connected and curious is absolutely essential. And maybe I'll just say one quick thing. So we are, when I say we, well, let me make one other statement. People will learn that I talk about In Rhythm a lot. In Rhythm is my partner, my operating partner in virtually everything I do. And within Rhythm, we're launching we're calling it a landscape. It's operating with the name With Life right now. And so in the future, Capital Institute courses will sit on a With Life landscape. And that landscape is meant to be a place where other organizations, other people who are aligned around this living systems frame will come and engage. And that's also where the first incubator we're running sits on this With Life landscape. So imagine in the future, today, if someone says Silicon Valley, we all immediately have an idea of what that means, what it looks like, where it is physically, what people there are doing, what they care about, what their kind of worldview is, what their value system is. And you can go there and go to Stanford University and learn all this, and then you can put it into practice, and there's venture capital industry. Well, imagine there's a similar virtual initially place where anyone who wants to go learn about and work in this regenerative economy can go and engage. That's our vision for that platform, and it'll be very much open beyond, you know, the Capital Institute view of things, but it'll be restricted to people working, you know, based on this idea of the economy as a living system and organizations are a living system, as opposed to the economy is a mechanistic machine and organizations are machined to be optimized and to extract value from nature and people.
Awesome. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tom. Carmen, hello.
Well,
Good to see you.
hello.
Carmen's
Can you hear
back.
me?
Carmen's
Oh,
back. We
yeah.
can.
So I have a couple of things to I guess to conclude with this session. Starting with, if you have not experienced a Capital Institute course or an In Rhythm course, for that matter, I'm talking to you as an alumni of the economics course, the finance course, and various In Rhythm leadership, regenerative leadership courses. And I am from Puerto Rico. I'm Latina and currently living in Ecuador. And I have to tell you, these, John, first of all, you know, you just said it, open and curious, and you exemplify that. I think, you know, one of the things that I've been so impressed with you, John, is really your humility. You're standing in humility and openness, and you stay curious as you share this amazing, amazing information, principles with us that are life transforming. That's the first thing I want to say. And this team, John and Rachel, you're like the top team, really, with regard to presenting courses online. Because, you know, you talk about the content, but you also have to talk about the, you know, we want to talk, the students that are considering taking this course want to learn about also the experience that they're going to have in the course. And the experience is fantastic. It's professional, it's inspiring, you know, Rachel, with your music at the beginning, you get us all pumped up, and the guests that come in for the dialogues, absolutely life transforming experience, the whole course. The other thing I want to say is the community, because I don't think you emphasized it enough. You know, you talk about networks, right? And where do we go? And we feel so alone. I know that I did. I felt so alone before discovering Capital Institute. And I know many of you here also, you're like in silos out there. No one understands you. They, you know, people think you're crazy. Why are you thinking this way? You know, I know that's where I was a few years ago. And now I've got the community at Capital Institute. I'm not alone anymore. Oh, I've met the most amazing people, and I've made the most amazing friends in Capital Institute and in the In Rhythm leadership community. So if you're looking for connections and you're looking for like-minded people and you don't want to feel alone on this planet, this is where you need to be. That's the thing. And then I want to end with something that his name is Alex. Alex, you were right on the chat where you say, maybe we are the people who have to partner and build better businesses to employ future graduates. We are. In other words, John hit it on the nail. Conceptual, Capital Institute, we come here for the conceptual conversation to discover the principles, but it behooves us, it is on us to apply them to our own lives, to our projects, to our businesses, to our work, wherever it is that we work, okay, to create those future jobs ourselves. Not look for the jobs, create them ourselves. That's what it's about. I'm inviting all of you to take, by the way, neither of them invited me to this meeting. I'm here as a volunteer. They didn't even know I was going to show up. Okay. I am here saying anybody that's thinking about it, that's on the fence, this is your opportunity. Don't wait for the finance course. I took the Regenerative Economics course and then the finance course. I have a finance background and economics background, and that is the way to do it. You take the economics course now, the finance course later, you join the community, you meet like-minded people, I'm here. I love to meet all of you.
Okay.
Go for
Carmen.
it, register and go. That's it. That's what I want to share.
Thanks, Carmen. We love your energy.
I swear we didn't know she was coming.
Amazing
You
to
probably
have
would
you
have
here.
blocked me. You
Thanks for
probably would have
joining.
blocked me if you had known that.
Great. Thank you, Carmen. I know we're coming to time now. Just wanted to say thank you again for all of those who could join us live and to those who are listening to the recording. Please reach out to us direct on the Capital Institute email. I know I keep popping in the chat, but want to make sure you don't miss it with any further questions, and we'll be happy to chat more there. But thanks again, and we hope to see you on the course next week, Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone. Look forward to seeing you. Bring a friend. Actually, one last thought. It's much easier to put this into practice when you're working with someone who's experienced it. So in all seriousness, if you are working in an organization and are planning to come, drag someone else from your organization with you, because you'll need that person to bounce ideas off as you go back into the quote real world. I should have mentioned that earlier.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Carmen.